Keanu Reeves walked into a luxurious restaurant, dressed in worn-out clothes and hiding under a low-pulled cap, as if blending into the background. But instead of being welcomed, he was mocked by the staff for his modest appearance. Little did they know, the man they underestimated was the owner of the very place. What shocking revelation will leave everyone speechless? What do you think will happen next? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and follow our channel for more inspiring stories. Now let's dive into this surprising tale. Lumiere wasn't just a restaurant, it was a symbol of elegance and prestige in the heart of Beverly Hills. The glistening crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, and perfectly arranged tables painted a picture of opulence. This was a place where the rich and powerful dined not just for the food, but for the spectacle of being seen. Amid this glittering atmosphere, a man stepped inside. His faded jeans, worn shirt, and low-pulled baseball cap made him look like he belonged anywhere but here. He wasn't flashy or commanding attention, but his quiet presence stood out in a place where appearances mattered most. That man was Keanu Reeves. Tonight, Keanu wasn't here to enjoy the luxury or bask in the admiration of others. He had come with a purpose, to observe and ensure that Lumiere, a restaurant he partly owned, lived up to its founding vision. A place where anyone, regardless of how they looked, could feel valued and respected. As Keanu approached the reception desk, Samantha, a seasoned waitress, glanced up from her clipboard. Her eyes flickered with barely concealed judgment as she took in his appearance. To her, he was just another underdressed guest who didn't belong. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Samantha asked, her voice tinged with sarcasm. Keanu paused for a moment, taking in her tone. But instead of reacting, he gave a small, polite smile and replied calmly, "Just a small table, please. Thank you." Samantha raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a faint smirk. She grabbed a menu and motioned for him to follow her. "This way," she said with a dismissive tone. "I'll find you something suitable." She led him to the farthest corner of the restaurant, near the kitchen, where the clattering of dishes and muffled chatter of the staff were a constant backdrop. Dropping the menu on the table with an audible thud, she gestured to the chair. "Here you go," she said with a fake smile. "Let me know if you need anything. Simple." Keanu sat down without a word, his expression calm and composed. But as he looked around the lavish dining room from his isolated corner, he wondered, had Lumiere truly lost its way? Samantha led Keanu through the dining room, her steps sharp and deliberate, echoing against the polished marble floor. She didn't glance back to check if he was following. To her, this man, dressed in faded jeans and a worn-out shirt, didn't belong among the finely dressed clientele enjoying their wine and gourmet meals. Instead of guiding him to one of the central tables where the warm golden glow of the chandeliers highlighted the grandeur of the restaurant, she steered him toward the farthest corner near the kitchen. The ambiance here was vastly different. The clatter of dishes, muffled chatter of the staff, and dim lighting created a stark contrast to the luxurious elegance of the rest of Lumiere. When they reached the table, Samantha dropped the menu onto it with an audible thud. Her lips curled into a faint, insincere smile as she gestured to the chair. "For someone like you, this spot is just perfect," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Keanu glanced at the table, then at the bustling kitchen just a few feet away. His calm, composed demeanor didn't waver. He paused briefly, taking in the situation before sitting down with a polite nod. "Thank you," he said softly, his tone steady and warm. Samantha lingered for a moment, her expression expectant, as though waiting for him to object or complain. But when he didn't react, she added, loud enough for nearby diners to hear, "Let me know if you need anything. Simple." Her voice carried across the room, drawing the attention of a few patrons. An elderly man at a nearby table frowned, leaning slightly toward his companion. "That doesn't seem right," he whispered, his tone disapproving. His companion glanced toward the scene, then quickly looked back at her plate, unwilling to make a scene in such a sophisticated setting. The low hum of murmurs rippled briefly through the room, but no one spoke up. Keanu, seemingly unaffected, opened the menu and began to read. His expression remained serene, betraying none of the disappointment he felt inside. "I had hoped for better," he thought to himself, "but this is why I'm here." As Keanu sat in the dimly lit corner, unnoticed by most and dismissed by others, Samantha's disdain was far from over. Little did she know her actions were setting the stage for a lesson no one in the restaurant would forget. Keanu sat quietly at the corner table, the menu resting in his hands. The muffled sounds of clattering dishes from the kitchen filled the space around him, but his attention remained on the pages before him. His movements were unhurried, deliberate, as if savoring the process of choosing a meal. Samantha approached, her notepad poised and an eyebrow slightly raised. She stopped just short of the table, her posture radiating impatience. "What would you like?" she asked, her tone clipped. Keanu glanced up, offering her the same calm, polite demeanor he'd shown all evening. Pointing at one of the entrees, he said, "I'd like to try this." Samantha leaned in, scanning the menu to confirm his choice. It was the restaurant's most expensive dish, a $350 filet mignon infused with rare truffle oil. Straightening up, she smirked, her expression a mix of disbelief and condescension. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice loud enough to catch the attention of a few nearby diners. "That dish is $350. I just thought you might want to double-check before I put the order in." Keanu's eyes met hers, his expression unwavering. "I know," he said simply, his voice steady and firm. "It sounds interesting. I'd like to try it." For a brief moment, Samantha seemed caught off guard by his lack of hesitation. She had expected an awkward apology, a stammered excuse, or even a change of order. Instead, Keanu's composure only seemed to irritate her more. With a quick, dismissive laugh, she scribbled his order onto her notepad. "All right then," she said sharply, turning on her heels and walking back toward the kitchen. But instead of heading straight to deliver the order, she stopped at the counter where her coworker was sorting drink orders. Leaning in, she muttered loud enough for a few nearby patrons to overhear. "Can you believe it? People like him always act like they belong. Watch. He'll probably just ask for tap water when the bill comes." Her coworker glanced up, visibly uncomfortable. "Maybe he just wants to enjoy dinner like everyone else," he replied quietly, avoiding eye contact as he continued arranging the glasses. Samantha scoffed, rolling her eyes before turning toward the kitchen. Across the room, a few diners had taken notice of the exchange. An elderly man sitting with his companion shook his head subtly. "That's not right," he whispered, his tone heavy with disapproval. His companion looked toward the scene, then back at her plate, hesitant to get involved. Keanu, meanwhile, remained calm. Sitting at his isolated table, he returned his attention to the menu as if nothing had happened. But behind his composed exterior, his thoughts were focused. "I came here to observe," he thought, "and this is exactly why I needed to." As Samantha's dismissive remarks lingered in the air, the atmosphere in the restaurant began to shift. But while Keanu remained calm, the lesson he was there to deliver was just beginning. The air in Lumiere shifted as the glass doors swung open. The restaurant manager, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, stepped inside, his sharp eyes scanning the room. It was a routine entrance, but the moment his gaze fell on Keanu, everything changed. "Mr. Reeves!" he exclaimed, his voice echoing across the dining room. The confidence in his posture softened into a gesture of genuine respect as he hurried toward the corner table. "It's truly an honor to have you here. If we had known you were coming, we would have prepared more appropriately." The room fell silent. Every head turned toward Keanu, the quiet murmurs and clinking silverware replaced by a collective hush. Samantha, who had been lingering near the counter, stiffened. Her tray of glasses trembled slightly in her hands as she processed the scene unfolding before her. Her confident smirk faded, replaced by a look of sheer disbelief. Keanu rose from his chair, his calm demeanor unchanged. He extended a hand to the manager, who took it with both hands, bowing his head slightly in deference. "Thank you," Keanu said, his voice steady yet kind. "It's been an enlightening evening." The manager hesitated, his brow furrowing slightly as he registered Keanu's choice of words. "Of course, Mr. Reeves," he said quickly, his tone eager to please. "Is there anything we can do to make your experience more enjoyable?" Keanu glanced around the room, his eyes meeting those of a few diners who now looked both curious and embarrassed. His gaze finally settled on Samantha, who stood frozen, her face pale, and her lips slightly parted as if searching for an explanation. "There is one thing," Keanu said, turning back to the manager. "If it's all right, I'd like to say a few words to the staff and guests." The manager nodded immediately, stepping aside to give Keanu the floor. The room remained silent as Keanu turned to face the crowd, his hands resting lightly on the back of his chair. He spoke with a quiet authority, his voice carrying to every corner of the restaurant. This restaurant was built on the idea that everyone who walks through these doors should feel welcome, he began. It's not about what they wear, how much money they have, or the car they drive. It's about creating a space where kindness and respect are at the heart of everything we do. His words resonated in the stillness, carrying weight not only for Samantha but for everyone listening. He paused, his gaze briefly settling on Samantha, whose head was now bowed, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. Sometimes, Keanu continued, we lose sight of that. We let our judgments and assumptions cloud the way we treat others, and when that happens, we fail, not just as individuals, but as a community. A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. Some diners glanced at their plates, while others shifted uneasily in their seats. Samantha's hands trembled as she lowered them, her face flushed with regret. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, Keanu said, his tone softening. But I believe that every moment, even the uncomfortable ones, is an opportunity to learn. Today, we've seen how quick judgments can harm not just individuals, but the spirit of a place. He paused, letting his words sink in. Kindness isn't just a nice idea, it's what defines us as people. It's what makes a place like this not just luxurious, but meaningful. The room remained silent, the weight of Keanu's words lingering in the air. A few diners nodded subtly, their expressions thoughtful. One elderly man raised his glass in a quiet toast, his companion following suit. Keanu's gaze returned to Samantha. Her eyes met his briefly before darting away, tears welling as she whispered, I'm sorry. Her voice was barely audible, but it carried enough emotion to echo in the silence. Keanu nodded slightly, his expression encouraging. Every mistake is a chance to do better, he said gently. The real question is, what will you do next? As Keanu returned to his seat, the restaurant began to buzz with quiet reflection. For Samantha, this wasn't just an evening of humiliation. It was a moment that could redefine how she approached her life and work. Keanu took a step forward, his calm gaze sweeping across the room. The air was heavy with silence, and all eyes were on him. Despite the attention, his demeanor remained steady, exuding a quiet authority that commanded respect. This restaurant, he began, his voice clear and deliberate, was built on the idea that everyone who walks through these doors should feel welcome. It's not about what they wear, how much money they have, or the car they drive. It's about creating a space where kindness and respect are at the heart of everything we do. His words hung in the air, resonating with the stillness of the room. He turned his head slightly, meeting the eyes of a few guests who now looked down at their plates, embarrassed by their earlier silence. Others nodded subtly, their expressions thoughtful. Keanu continued, his tone unwavering but gentle. True elegance, true luxury, isn't about chandeliers or expensive meals. It's about how we treat one another. That's what makes a place like this not just beautiful, but meaningful. The sincerity in his voice left an impact that was hard to ignore. He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in before turning to Samantha. Her face was flushed, her hands clasped tightly together as if bracing herself. Keanu addressed her directly, his tone firm but not unkind. Samantha, he said, kindness is a quality that never goes out of style. It costs nothing, but its value is immeasurable. I hope today has been a lesson you'll carry with you for a long time. Tears welled in Samantha's eyes as she nodded, her voice trembling. I'm sorry, she whispered, her regret evident. I let my judgments get the better of me. I promise I'll do better. Keanu's expression softened and he offered her a small, encouraging smile. Mistakes happen, he said. What matters is how you move forward. Every choice we make is a chance to be better. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. An elderly man at one table raised his glass, his companion following suit, a silent gesture of acknowledgement. Keanu nodded back at them before turning to the rest of the room. My hope, he said, addressing everyone now, is that this moment stays with all of us. It's not just about one person's actions, but about how we choose to show up for each other, every day in every situation. The room remained silent, the weight of his words lingering like the final note of a powerful song. Slowly, applause began to fill the space, soft at first, then growing louder as more diners joined in. Keanu stepped back, his hands in his pockets, his smile modest yet genuine. He gave a slight bow before returning to his table, where he sat quietly, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. As the applause died down, the room seemed lighter, as though the weight of earlier judgments had been lifted. For Samantha, this moment wasn't just a lesson, it was the beginning of change. As the applause faded and the room settled into a contemplative silence, Samantha remained frozen in place. Her hands trembled slightly, gripping the edge of the counter as she stared at the floor. The weight of Keanu's words hung heavy in the air, and she felt it most profoundly. Slowly, she stepped forward, her face pale and her eyes glistening with tears. I was wrong, she began, her voice trembling. She clasped her hands together tightly, as if trying to steady herself. I judged you because of how you looked. I assumed things about you that I had no right to assume. I forgot that everyone, every single person, deserves respect. Her voice cracked, and she wiped a tear from her cheek. I'm sorry, she said, her tone filled with genuine regret. Not just to you, but to everyone here. I let my pride and assumptions take over, and I failed to live up to what this place stands for. Keanu watched her, his expression calm, yet empathetic. He took a small step closer, his voice steady and kind. Samantha, he said, we all make mistakes. What matters most is how we choose to learn from them. She nodded, her tears flowing more freely now. I promise I'll do better, she said, her voice firmer. I'll work harder to treat everyone with the kindness and respect they deserve. I'll make this right. Keanu offered her a gentle smile. That's all anyone can ask for, he said. Growth starts with recognition and the willingness to change. You've already taken the first step. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room as diners exchanged approving glances. The elderly man who had been quietly observing raised his glass again, this time directing a warm nod toward Samantha. Across the room, a woman softly clapped, and soon others joined in. Not the loud celebratory applause from earlier, but a quieter, more intimate show of support. Samantha looked around, her eyes widening slightly at the unexpected gesture. She gave a small, grateful smile, then bowed her head slightly in acknowledgement. Keanu turned back to his table, his presence still commanding, but never overbearing. Before sitting, he looked toward Samantha one last time. Remember, he said gently, it's not about perfection, it's about effort. Every day is a new chance to do better. Samantha nodded, her shoulders straightening as if a newfound resolve had taken root. Thank you, she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of sincerity. For the lesson and for your kindness. As the restaurant began to settle back into its rhythm, a renewed energy seemed to fill the air. For Samantha and everyone else present, this wasn't just another evening. It was a moment of transformation. The evening air was crisp as Keanu stepped out of Lumiere, the city lights of Beverly Hills sparkling around him. The noise of passing cars and the hum of conversation from pedestrians created a lively backdrop. But Keanu seemed lost in thought. He reached up and adjusted his cap, pulling it low over his face, once again blending into the crowd. Before walking away, he paused on the sidewalk, turning back to glance at the restaurant. The soft glow of the chandeliers through the glass windows gave Lumiere an air of elegance. But to Keanu, the true beauty of the place wasn't in its decor. It was in its potential to be a sanctuary of kindness and respect. With a small smile, he murmured to himself, it's not just the staff who need reminders like this. All of us do. The value of a person isn't found in their appearance, but in who they are. He turned and began to walk, his steps steady as he disappeared into the vibrant energy of the city. Behind him, the restaurant buzzed with a renewed sense of reflection and purpose. For Samantha, for the staff, and even for the guests who had witnessed the evening's events, it wasn't just a dinner, it was a lesson. Lumiere, with its shining chandeliers and lavish meals, had always been a symbol of sophistication. But tonight, it had become something more. It was a place that reminded everyone present of the simple yet profound truth, the power of kindness and the importance of seeing beyond what meets the eye. If this story resonated with you, let us know by giving this video a like and sharing it with someone who might need a little reminder about the power of kindness. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss more inspiring stories like this one. Your support means the world to us and helps our team stay motivated to bring you more meaningful content every week. Thank you for watching, And remember, a little kindness can go a long way. See you in the next story.